Our cross-country trip ultimately started in our living room, where my 5 children and I were looking at videos of national parks, and were especially attracted to the idea of visiting Yosemite National Park. But here's the problem. We live in DC, and so Yosemite isn't exactly a short drive away. My husband and I believe strongly in the value of travel and getting our children to see more of the world. We try to budget a trip with them at least once a year, but this idea of a cross-country trip that started to hatch in my living room was not in our budget for the year. So I had the idea to use this as an education tool and to teach them to appreciate travel. The first step was to have our kids put together a proposal for their dad and I to approve to see if we could make this trip happen. It started with them making a plan. Where did they want to go? What did they want to do along the way? This was great because it got our kids looking into and researching what different things they would like to experience along the path of the trip. The second part was counting the cost. Now, kids really have no idea what things cost, and they quickly learned that travel involved more than just the fee of the hotel. We had them itemize out and estimate the cost of everything, from gas to food, tolls to park entrance fees, and everything else. Then they had to make a budget. What they were going to spend the money on, what they would do to cut cost corners. So, for example, my children decided to bring things so that they could eat lunch in the car while allowing them to do extra fun things like taking the Sandia lift in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was great because they were making choices about what was valuable to them and what they didn't feel was really necessary to add in. Finally, they had to brainstorm on how it could be paid for. We told them how much we could contribute to the trip, but it was not enough to cover the costs. So they had to figure out how they could help pay for it. They asked their grandparents for money towards the trip instead of gifts for Christmas. They found extra ways to make money. They gave up fun things that they would usually do to stash the money away. All of this was awesome because it taught them the value of the trip. The proposal was approved by their dad and I, and the planning and excitement began there. We have had multiple conversations about the trip, little choices of what we're going to do, how we could adjust things, and the excitement has just built. I've loved the ownership my kids have had over this trip. This trip is my kids'. They've planned it. They've helped pay for it. I think it's good for us to teach our kids the value of these kinds of things. And I hope it will inspire them to become world explorers and more responsible adults.